I think we can all agree that NFL Week 2 was one of the craziest we've ever seen, but we hung in there. So let's move on. NFL Week 3, the first game that I'm looking at is between Green Bay and Tennessee. So Green Bay has an injury to their quarterback. They're playing with a backup quarterback who's somewhat new. Tennessee doesn't particularly have a great quarterback either. So really, I think a lot of people are looking at this game thinking Green Bay's down because of the injury to the quarterback. But when I look at the situation between them and Tennessee, their quarterbacks are really about equal strength. Green Bay's ranked 24th. Tennessee's ranked 32nd, which would be last. But when you get down to ranks that are that low, the actual numbers that underlie them, there's not that much of a difference. But when I look at the rest of the items across the team, I see that Green Bay has a better receiving core. They have a better offensive line. They have a better defensive front. Again, they're not great, but they're better than Tennessee is. And I have Green Bay having around an average secondary where Tennessee has a weaker secondary. With this game, I got a very good line on it. And my pick for this game is Green Bay on the money line plus 143 at Prime Sportsbook. Like I said, I got a great money line on this. So was originally thinking of taking the spread, but with a good price on the money line, I took Green Bay to win straight up. I think they get the win here. They're a better team all around. If Jordan Love was in, they would be favorites. I don't think that Tennessee is the better team here. I think Green Bay is the better team. So with that price, I took Green Bay. So the next game I'm taking a look at is between Philadelphia and New Orleans. So Philadelphia, a good team. They have a good quarterback. They have a good offensive line. They have a good defensive front and really an average secondary. New Orleans is above average in quarterbacks, running backs, average in receivers. They tend to have a weaker defense, especially in the front. One place where they're weak is their offensive line. Look at this game, though. There is a very high total on it, which is 50. So in this particular game, I took Philadelphia, New Orleans under 50, and I took that at Prime Sportsbook. So 50 is a lot of points. 50 would be a high-scoring game where both teams are scoring a lot of points. I think the strength of Philadelphia's defensive front against the weakness of New Orleans' offensive line will allow them to put a lot of stops to runs. It'll allow them to pressure the quarterback and will lead to a somewhat lower scoring game. If I look at tempo, which is how fast teams play, New Orleans is one of the slowest teams. They're kind of a methodical offense who plays a slow game. So looking at this game, again, 50 is a very high total. I think it'll come in under the number here. So I took Philadelphia, New Orleans under 50 at minus 111, and I took that at Prime Sportsbooks. So another game on Sunday that I was taking a look at was the game between the Chargers and Pittsburgh. So the Chargers are a good team. One thing to note is that Justin Herbert got a minor injury on Sunday. They've looked at it. The MRI came back negative. Pro Football Focus seems to think he's playing, and this pick involves him playing. But the key here is that the other parts of the Chargers team are okay. Their receiving core is not that good. Their offensive line's average. Their defensive secondary is very weak. When I look at Pittsburgh, they're an average offense really all around, except for the receiving core, which I have ranked 29th out of 32. Offensive line's not much better. Their defensive front's very, very good, ranked number 1. And their defensive secondary I have average ranked at about 15th. So as I mentioned, Justin Herbert, it seems like he's likely to play. He may be injured. He may be out, and they would be playing with a rookie. But given the fact that the total in this game is very low at 35.5, I think that the best play on this game is the over. So even if Justin Herbert's injured and they have a rookie in, 35.5 is a tiny amount of points. Anything could go wrong in this game, and it'll go over that number. A pick six, and with Pittsburgh having a good defensive front, the chance for a fumble, especially in the opponent's red zone, is likely. So there's a lot of benefits here. One of the other things that if Justin Herbert is confirmed to play, I think this total is going to jump up. So we have a good chance to get value here before that's announced. I don't think it moves that much against us if he's out, but I think it moves a lot in our favor if he's in. So that was my pick in the game between the Chargers and Pittsburgh, over 35.5, minus 110. I took that at Caesars. So another game on Sunday that I'm looking at is the game between Baltimore and Dallas. So Baltimore is a good team, really, in offense. Their quarterback's very good. Their running backs are good. Their receivers are average. Their offensive line's average. And they have a decent defense. I have both their defensive front and their defensive secondary ranked in the top 10. For Dallas, I have Dak Prescott ranked around 8th. Their running back situation is not that good. Their receivers are good in the top 10. Their offensive line's a little weak, but again, their defense is pretty strong with their defensive front ranked 9th, and their defensive secondary ranked 11th. So in this game between Baltimore and Dallas, I actually like the under here as well. So Baltimore and Dallas under 48.5 at minus 107, and I took that at Prime Sportsbooks. So the defenses are good here, and with a total that's on the higher side of 48.5, I would expect the defenses to be a little bit weaker. I think that with the weakness in offensive line, between both these teams, the defensive front should be able to put pressure on the quarterbacks and lead to a slower, less high-scoring game. So Baltimore, Dallas, 48.5 at minus 107, and I took that at Prime Sportsbook. So I'm going out west now, and I'm going to take a look at the game between Carolina and Las Vegas. So Carolina's recently changed quarterbacks. They're confirmed to be starting Andy Dalton. So Andy Dalton is a veteran quarterback. You know, his best days may have been behind him, but he's still a veteran presence. He's still a guy that I don't think is going to lose them games. I think he's going to keep them in games. And when I look at the rest of the statistics between these teams, Las Vegas has decent receivers. They have a decent offensive line. They have a decent front seven. They have a weaker secondary. When I look at Carolina, they're really average. Their defensive front's kind of weak, but their secondary is very good. So with this game, I think that there's a lot of overreaction with both of these teams. I think with Carolina, people think Carolina is a bad team, and it's true. They're not a very good team. I think that Andy Dalton's going to be an improvement over what they had, and it at least gives them a chance to fight in some games. With Las Vegas, they beat Baltimore last weekend. That's very impressive. Gardner Minshew, their quarterback, I used PFF rankings. They don't particularly have him as a very good quarterback. Again, this is one of these situations where I think a lot of people are overreacting to last week. I think there's positive signs here for Carolina. I think they have a chance in this game, but for this game, I took Carolina plus 5.5 at minus 107. I took that at Prime Sportsbooks. I think with Andy Dalton starting at quarterback and the fact that Las Vegas is not that great a team. They're really around average, maybe a little bit below. They're not overpowered, at least looking at the numbers versus Carolina. So I think 5.5 is a decent amount of points to get in the NFL. I think that Carolina can hang here enough to not lose by 6 or greater. So as I said, my pick in this game is Carolina plus 5.5 at minus 107, and I took it at Prime Sportsbook. So continue on to the Sunday night game between Kansas City and Atlanta. So Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback. We all know that. Isaac Pacheco is out, so they're starting a different running back. Their receivers are good. Their offensive line's good. Their defensive front's good. Their defensive secondary I have around average. Kirk Cousins I have ranked 6th in quarterbacks. Their running backs and receivers are around average. Their offensive line's very good. Their defensive front's really average, and their defensive secondary is good. So in this game, I think there's a lot of things that go Atlanta's way. So I personally feel that secondaries are more impactful in the game than decent defensive fronts, so I would give the edge to Atlanta there. As well, Atlanta has good offensive line. They're playing at home. They're coming off a win. So for this game, again, I got a good price on it, and I got Atlanta plus 158 on the money line, and I got that at Caesars. So I don't necessarily think that Atlanta's favored to win the game. I'd probably have it maybe closer to 53-47 or so. But given the fact that I'm getting that much edge based on the price that I got, I think Atlanta is a good spot to play here. They're a competitive team. They played a good game last week. Kansas City's good, and that's true, but just because a team is good doesn't mean that they're going to win all the games in the season. I think this is a good spot for Atlanta in the fact that they're home, they're relatively evenly matched, maybe slightly worse, as I said. But given the fact that I'm getting this high money line, I'll take it. I think it's a good spot here. So Atlanta plus 158, and I took that at Caesars. So the other game I was taking a look at this week is the Monday night game between Washington and Cincinnati. So Washington I have is all around a weak team. One bright spot is their offensive line's pretty decent. Looking Cincinnati, they're really average all around. One of the things that I look at in this game is tempo. So for tempo, I'm looking at how quickly teams play. And Washington has one of the slowest tempos, which is to be expected. It's a rookie quarterback. They're still working out kind of the flow of the NFL and the flow of NFL offenses. Cincinnati's really around average. With this game, neither of the teams I have is particularly good. I didn't particularly think Cincinnati was a strong team. I bet against them week 1 and took the Patriots. The Patriots won. I haven't really seen very many signs to say that Cincinnati's that great of a team. They played a tight game to Kansas City. That's fine. But As I always say, last week isn't everything, and I think Cincinnati is a weaker team. So in this game, though, I took under 48.5 at -110 at Caesars. So with a slower tempo, with the fact that the offense of Washington is not particularly good, where the defense of Cincinnati is really around average, I don't particularly see this as a particularly high-scoring game. You know, with 48.5, so they have to get 49. Both teams are going to have to be scoring a decent amount of points, and I don't necessarily see Washington scoring that many points. So that leaves me to say, is Cincinnati a high-powered offense? No. So with these teams combined, I think they'll score less than a total of 49 points. So I took under 48.5 at -110, and I took that at Caesars. And the last game that I wanted to cover today is the Thursday night game between New England and the New York Jets. So New England, I bet on them week 1 on the money line, and they came through. Jacoby Brissett's he's an average quarterback. Their running back situation's really around average. Their receiving core's kind of weak. Their offensive line's significantly weaker than average. Their defensive front's weaker than average, but not by much. But their defensive secondary, I have ranked as number 1. They have strong secondary. When I look at the Jets, Aaron Rodgers, I have ranked as average. I mean, it's another situation. He's an aging quarterback. He's still good. He's still not going to necessarily lose them games. But when I look at his receiving core, he doesn't have particularly good receivers to throw to. Both their offensive line, their defensive fronts are very good, and their defensive secondary is in the top 10. So the Jets are not a bad team. They're a good team. New England is really more of an average team. And that's kind of what I've said the entire time, is that New England's not necessarily a great team. They're more of an average team. But when I look at this game, I get a great price on it as well. And I got New England plus 225 on the money line. So it's a division game. New England has shown that they're able to hang in games. They're able to fight. On paper, they're really an average team. The Jets are an above average team, but not to that degree. And you may ask, why would I take the money line and not the spread? The question is, I'm not particularly concerned about winning one bet. I want to get the best value that I can over the short season of the NFL, and that leads me to take a lot of money lines. I think this is a spot where New England could come out and play a good game, and they could be the victors here, and you get a great payout at 225. So that was my play on Thursday night, is New England money line at plus 225, and I took that at DraftKings. Thanks so much. Bye.